Hello world, and we are back. My name's Fischl. This is going to be episode 187 of my poker vlog. We are playing today at Sarasota, Florida, the One-Eyed Jacks Poker Club, and we're going to get right into some hands. First hand of note. The only gun player raises to $10. I'm on the button with pocket eights. I think it's definitely reasonable to put in a 3-bet, but because he's the under the gun player, has a tighter than normal range in general, I think I'm just going to call here, play in position, a little bit of pot control, and the small blind size to call as well. So we end up going 3 ways to a flop, which comes 7-5 deuce with 2 spades. Now the pre-flop aggressor bets $15. On this board, I think it favors me heavily. If I have pocket 8s, I definitely have pocket 7s, pocket 5s. Definitely want to protect my hand against random 2-over cards, spade draws, all kinds of stuff that could be dangerous. So I decided to raise right now $40, thinking I have the range advantage. My opponent could just be c-betting with some ace-high nonsense, so definitely want to put in the raise right now. But he's a little sticky. He makes the call. That's fine. We're heads up to a turn card, which is the 3 of hearts. All right, we retain an overpair. We're going to keep betting here. Flush draws probably don't give up. They give us value when we're ahead, but random 2-over cards might give up at this point. We're fine to fold out that equity. So we bet $60 with pocket 8s, and my opponent makes the call again. Not my favorite development, even less so when the river is the 9 of hearts. It's an overcard. Not really expecting it to connect to my opponent that much, but he checks to me. Pretty happy to check it back. Maybe he has like ace-7, something that wasn't willing to give up as it was also top pair. But no, this time he has pocket 10s, and we get kind of a micro cooler to start this session out. But after that, we looked at a pocket queens, definitely an upgrade. We are under the gun. We raised to $15. The cutoff, the button, and then the small blind all call before the big blind raises to $43. I already hate this spot. The big blind is, let's say, a person of above average age drinking a hot caffeinated morning beverage that's usually associated with breakfast. So this gentleman decides to raise to $43. We hate this spot with queens, and we're just going to call here, never 4-betting this particular opponent. So we get to see a flop in position to this player, see if anyone else wants to come along. Everyone else kind of agrees with my assessment that even though it's only $30 to call, pot is pretty big. None of them want to continue. I think my opponent squarely has aces or kings. So we are really just set mining with these queens. And in the window, we see a queen, but it's followed by a king and a 5, rainbow board. So we do have a set. We're beating aces. We're losing to kings pretty handily. My opponent doesn't seem to care. He bets $75. I'm not folding a set of queens just yet. Could easily be beating aces for a whole stacking. So we're going to go heads up to a turn card, which of course is the ace of hearts.
I guess there is no such thing as a jinx. What?
We're dead here. I know we're dead here. I don't even hesitate to fold this set when my opponent bets $125 on the turn. Face up, and the whole table at this point, and I'm sure many commenters chirp up, oh, he could easily have ace-king here. You're totally fine. But no, this one is just a fold. Maybe unnecessary to do it face up. I'm extremely confident that this was a correct fold, and it kind of sucks to fold top set. But to actually win at poker, you must be player specific. You must be the highest end of exploitative play. If you were just playing GTO in a table where no one else really is, then it's not really going to work out the way it's supposed to, because it implies that everyone else is playing optimally and people just are not. But we win a small one, we get in the right direction, less notable. When we fold pocket queens for a set face up, it lets us 3-bet a little wider. So here with an open to $15, I 3-bet pocket 9s to $45. I think I'm going to get a stupid amount of credit since I just folded queens. And it does. Pocket 9s gets a scoop, so get a little wide 3-bet through. Feels pretty good. Before we look down at ace-10 offsuit. With the 10 of spades. With one limp, I raise to $15. The small blind, the big blind, and the limper decide to call. So we end up going 4 ways to a flop, which comes ace 4 deuce with 2 spades. Having 10 of spades means me not too worried about flush draws. Have an ace. We're going to bet here. I bet $25. Kind of a small bet, trying to get value from weaker aces, maybe some middling pocket pairs, some straight draws, all kinds of stuff. And only the player from the pocket queen's hand decides to call. All right, turns the jack of clubs. When he checks to me, I'm going to bet here. I think that sometimes we're going to check back turn to value bet / bluff catch river. This is going to be one of the times where we bet flop, bet turn, and look to check back river with a medium top pair. So I bet $65 and my opponent calls. When the river is the king of diamonds, my plan goes completely out the window when my opponent leads for 125. It always sucks when you actually bet turn with the plan of checking back river and your opponent just leads into you, making your whole plan kind of stupid and pointless. However, in this point, a lot of the stuff going through my head is that, is my opponent just think I'm going to overfold because I showed folding a set to him to a $125 bet before? I think that is possible. That's kind of the danger of showing big folds. Sometimes you think your opponents can take advantage of you when you show that, but because we folded then, we are not going to fold now. Sometimes we have to defend. We have to keep our opponents honest, and we call with our top pair. And my opponent shows pocket jacks for a turned set. Definitely disappointing, definitely not what we wanted to see. But one additional point on this hand, this opponent decided to limp call with pocket jacks. So anyone who had any doubt that he did not have aces or kings in the 3-bet hand, I think we all can put those doubts to rest on this one. But nothing better than looking down at pocket aces.
It's something finger licking good special. That's what I'm talking about.
On this one, with one limp, I raised to $20 in the hijack. The cutoff does not disappoint me. He raises to $60. What a dream spot. And it folds back to me. We're both sitting at about 1K deep, so I want to size up here a little bit bigger for my 4-bet. If my opponent's messing around with some weak 3-bet bluff, then we're happy to just punish him, make him fold, dissuade him from 3-betting me in the future. But if he has queens, kings, jacks, we're trying to get as close to getting stacks in pre-flop as possible. So we're going to make it 225, definitely size up 3.5 times his bet. And he doesn't take too long before folding, so
I may not ever be back again, but I got in what I needed to get in. So I'm going to just woosah.
No additional money to be had here, but we'll take an aces 4-bet, take it down, easy game. Now we have king 10 of hearts in the big blind with 2 limps. The small blind decides to complete. I'm going to raise to $15. Could go bigger, but king 10 of hearts, not the greatest hand. We're out of position, but we definitely want to build this pot a little bit. 15 is the wager. One limper folds, the button calls, and the small blind calls. So we end up going 3 ways to a flop, which is 3 hearts. The queen, 5, and 4 of them. Nice to flop a flush. So rarely do we ever actually flop monsters. Not really sure what the best play is, but I'm sure putting money in the middle can't be too bad. So I bet $15. The button folds, but then the small blind, my friend / nemesis in this video, decides to call. All right, dealer, you give me some hot trash all day. It is time not to pair. Oh, it's the 4 of clubs. And even worse so, my opponent leads out for $25. Well, we could actually be drawing dead. You know, full houses, there is no improvement for me against that, but king high flush, definitely not folding. Could even raise here, test your opponent. Maybe he's leading with like ace 4, ace of hearts. There's some hands here that might lead here feeling pretty good, but aren't doing too well against a king high flush specifically. But we decide to just call here. We're in position, we get to reevaluate on the river, and the river is the 10 of diamonds. My opponent bets $25 again. This is the point where we're going to raise. We have a king high flush. Yes, the board's paired. Could be dicey, but I think there's value to be had against trips, a worse flush, maybe a disbelieving queen X. So we're going to go for a small 3x raise to $75. And this raise seems to be too much as my opponent folds pretty quickly, but we take one down. Nice to go for the value raise on some dangerous boards. Following that, we look down at red pocket 10s in the big blind. With 2 limps, this one's a little bit stronger than king 10 suited. We're going to raise up to $20. 1 limper and the small blind calls. So we end up going 3 ways to a flop, which comes 8, 5, 3 with 2 hearts. Nice to keep an open pair with 10s. Doesn't happen too often. You usually get much worse boards than this. So when we get a good board like this, we need to protect our hand a little bit against overcards and flush draws. We bet $35 when check 2. The player who has position on me decides to fold, but the small blind is not a quitter. He calls for the $35. And the turn is the 8 of hearts. Kind of interesting. Having the 10 of hearts here, we're not too worried about flushes. The top card pairing, obviously better for my opponent. But when he checks to me, this could be one of those spots where we just keep betting. Maybe he has a hand like 6-4, 4 deuce, pocket 7s, pocket 9s. Things like that that'll still call. And even if we're behind, sometimes a heart's going to bail us out. So we bet $65 and my opponent pretty much snap folds. So we win this one. Feels pretty good. We also keep the train moving as we win another small one. Before I'm on the button with ace jack offsuit, I straddle to $5 and with one limp, the +1 player raises to $20. I decided to call here again against such an early position raise. We're not going to 3-bet the offsuit variety of ace jack. Suited, we would at some frequency. Offsuit seems like just a call. Small blind size to call as well. So we are 3 ways to a flop, which is 9-9-9. As you can imagine, when there's 3 9s out there, it is a rainbow board. When it checks the preflop aggressor, he bets $20. Very small. I think this does fold out a lot of ace high holdings at least some of the time. Just not me. I have position 2 overs. A jack or an ace should give me the best hand. Sometimes chopping against other aces, but we're definitely not going to fold to a $120 bet with our exact holding here. Well, neither is the small blind, so we're 3 ways to a turn card, which is a Bink ace of diamonds. We have the third nuts, losing only to a random 9 and pocket aces specifically, but not too many combinations of those are even possible. Even better when both opponents check to me, I think I have a hammer lock on this hand. If my opponent had like a baby pocket pair, I expect him to call a river bet. So when check to, we're gonna go for the check back turn bet river, hoping to entice any pocket pairs. When I check it back, the river is the queen of hearts. Would have loved if it was lower than 9 because pocket queens technically beat me too. But both players check to me. So we're going to go relatively small with this. $55 will be the bet. Expect any 8s, 10s, jacks, 5s, all kinds of stuff to call this. But both players fold, so maybe they didn't have anything. Nice to just turn that ace though. Next hand of note. I have pocket 8s. When under the gun raises to $15, folds all the way to me in the small blind, I'm going to call with the 8s. Going for a set mine feels pretty standard. The big blind folds, we're heads up to ace 10-9 rainbow. My opponent bets $15, and I don't think I want to give up just yet. It's one regular C bet. My opponent can have a whole bunch of nonsense. So we're going to continue with our pocket 8s. And when the turn is the jack of spades, brings 2 spades on board, my opponent bets $65 when I check to him. This is where the hand gets interesting. I don't expect my opponent to have a nutted hand. It's really hard to bet twice when the nuts dramatically change from flop to turn. What I mean by that is I don't really expect my opponent to be betting king queen all too often. So if he has like an ace X hand, this seems like kind of a bad card to keep betting because I could easily have 7-8, king queen myself, maybe a 2 pair, all the sets. I feel like the nuts favor me in this exact board. Additionally, having pocket 8s, I think I double block 7-8, which is a hand that would very standardly just call flop and be able to raise here. So pocket 8s will be a raise. I make it 175. Think that this puts like ace 5, maybe king 10 or queen 9 of spades specifically in kind of a really bad spot. Pair plus flush draw, pair plus gut shot, all kinds of hands that are really not doing too well against a raise. Could be drawing dead at some frequency, and some of his weakest aces are kind of garbage. But for 175, my opponent thinks for a while and then eventually calls. The river is a brick, 5 of clubs, and now we're thinking if we want to go for it. Our hand somewhat blocks the nuts. Both 7-8 is more likely than queen 8, but we block some straights, but we do have showdown value. Maybe my opponent just has like 5-6 of spades and was just standard C betting, size up when he makes a flush draw and now actually has air. So there are a few hands that I beat. I think if my opponent had like ace 10 or ace jack, he's just never folding ever. So when deciding whether to ship it or give up, I think that having showdown value and thinking my opponent's unlikely to have a hand that folds river when they call for a large portion of their stack on the turn, I just check it and my opponent thinks for a little bit and then checks it back and has jack 8 of hearts. So pair of jacks will be good here. Hindsight sucks. I really wish I would have went for this follow through bluff on the river. But we win a small one when we actually move to the 2-5 table before our final hand of note. I have pocket kings in the small blind. With 3 limps, I raised to $30, and 2 of the limpers decided to call, so we're 3 ways to a flop, which is as bad as a flop as you can get with kings. It's ace, queen, queen, 2 clubs.
Life is pain. I wake up every morning, I'm in pain. I go to work in pain.
Ugh, gross. Flop checks through. Turn is the 4 of clubs. I check, hoping I can just check it to showdown and somehow win. However, the last player to act bets $25. Very small bet. We are not folding for 25. Hopefully he has like pocket 10s or 8s or 4 or 5. The other player calls 2, so we're 3 ways to a river card, which is the Jack of Diamonds. I guess I lose to pocket jacks too, but this time it checks all the way through. I actually assumed that I win, but no, the late position player has king queen. So had a great spot pre-flop. Flop was pretty bad for me, and that will do it for me on this day. I played this game for 5 hours and end up losing $1,000, which equates to $200 an hour in losses or 40 big blinds an hour.
Each time when I come here, I am abused.
Yeah, results-wise, not very good. Minus 1K, definitely a big hit. I do think I played somewhat decently today, and that some of the runouts just did not go in my favor. Few coolers here and there, but obviously I think the biggest hand that is kind of session-defining is pocket queens in a 3-bet pot versus let's just say a very tight player's 3-bet, which you don't see all too often. I say session defining because it's definitely less than standard. Almost no one would fold a set here for any reason. In GTO world, this would be a horrible, terrible play, but we're trying to exploit our players. You look at the things that they do incorrectly, i.e. not 3-betting wide enough or with the correct range, and then we adjust to the point where we can fold otherwise crazy hands when we are just exploiting our opponent's mistakes. Obviously, this is very unapplicable to like 5-10 and 10-20. Most of those players are pretty balanced, pretty correct, but at the 2-5 streets, you have to be able to exploit your opponents to be able to be successful. So if you made it all the way to this point, thank you. I appreciate the view. Any comments, any likes would also be appreciated, and I will see you on the next one.